For something so core to the Halo universe, it still often catches me that many fans don't know that John, the Master Chief, and the Spartan 2s and 3s are child soldiers. It's not something the classic trilogy broadcasts, only really appearing in the books, often very matter-of-factly. When Fred and Kelly removed their helmets at the end of Halo 4 Forward Unto Dawn, showing the youth of their faces, I remember a lot of fans rushing to Waypoint and other forums asking just how old the Spartan 2s were. It's something, in fact, that still occasionally pops up today. But as these fans enter the world of Halo lore or aspects they hadn't explored in some manner, another fact often pops up right next to it. The use of clones, or as it's referred to in Halo, flash cloning. And inevitably the question arises, why didn't Halsey just use flash clones rather than kidnapping children? Today we'll explore the question in all the depth available to us, starting with exactly what flash cloning is. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, cloning is the process of duplication, be it on the scale of proteins or cells to entire organisms. Copying. As one would expect, the humans of the 26th century had long since developed reliable cloning technology. The process of flash cloning specifically refers to rapid cloning and growth of human organs, tissue, or blood for the purpose of replacement in a host. Used in both civilian and military life, flash cloning takes cells from specific parts of the body and rapidly grows replacements of whatever is needed. Because the replacements are grown from the host DNA, the risk of rejection is eliminated entirely. Flash cloning can be done in large facilities in a matter of hours, though field kits with cloning tanks as small as a shoebox exist, which include sterile field generators to allow transplants in the field. One such kit was used by Dr. Halsey in Halo First Strike to grow a replacement lung and liver for Kelly 087. Between these, one can generally assume that the need for organ and blood donors is pretty low, if non-existent, depending on the colony. Of course, based on the prevalence of prosthetic limbs, such as those sported by Cat B320 in Halo Reach or Anthony Petrosky in Hunt the Truth, cloning replacement limbs isn't all that viable, though the reasons why are unknown. It could be that it's just not possible to clone an individual limb, or maybe there's an issue with nerve attachment. Who knows? But that, I think, brings us right into cloning full humans. In the Halo universe, cloning and its potential abuses has been a major concern since the earliest days of stellar expansion. The first piece of legislation to address human cloning was the UN Genetic Rights Act, an act that would be extended to Earth's stellar colonies in 2165 to address growing concerns of abuses by gene tech corporations in areas outside Earth's legal jurisdiction. Funny enough, that happened just a year after the start of the Interplanetary War in the same year as the UNSC was formed. Decades or centuries later, it's currently unknown, the UN Genetic Rights Act would serve as the basis for the UN Colonial Mortal Dictata. Among other things, the act would define the basic rights of a human regardless of their origin, ensuring that humans could not be brought into existence or co-opted for the convenience of others, and above all, banning the full cloning of humans. This act, among many others, would be violated several times by Dr. Halsey and Oni in the creation of the Spartan IIs.
Yeah.
And now, after all that, I think we can finally get to the core question of this video. When Halsey was trying to figure out how she would approach her super soldier program, she decided that children would make the best candidates, as they could more easily be molded into what the UNSC needed. Candidates would be screened based on genetic markers Halsey herself identified and taken from their homes to be turned into the ultimate weapons. As part of her plan, Halsey created clones of the children, their DNA primarily gathered via the Outer Colony vaccination program. Flash clones were created, grown at 100 times their normal development rate. The memories of the original children would also be copied into the clones, creating seemingly perfect replicas of the children. Incidentally, as revealed in Halsey's journal, the technique was perfected by the doctor herself pretty much just as she decided on how to go about her program. Talk about perfect timing. But anyway, here's where we get into the question. If Halsey could clone these children, why not just use the clones for the Spartans instead of kidnapping the children? Primarily, the rapid growth resulted in a massive increase in gene-related diseases and complications. Cognitive defects increased by 42% and Parkinson's plus syndromes by 67%.
Jeez.
Ultimately, though, they would all succumb to metabolic cascade failure, a series of neurological diseases that resulted in death no more than a year from onset. The majority of clones were given a lifespan of 14.7 weeks based on laboratory results, with a very small number potentially living normal lives. and a few did live well past expected expiration, Halsey theorizing that this might have been due to the care and love of the parents, but most, if not all, would succumb.
Wow.
But these issues specifically come from the rapid growth of the clones, so one could ask, why not let them grow at a natural rate? While this could potentially reduce or eliminate the issues presented by flash cloning, it would just take too long. The urgency of the Spartan II program necessitated action as soon as possible. Dr. Halsey notes that she would use clones if she could, but she knew, and as I hope has been demonstrated, that it just wasn't a viable option. The last thing I'd like to address is why use clones at all? What was the point? In Halsey's mind, it was twofold. One, to take suspicion off Oni. It's not impossible that someone might notice 75, or originally 150, children going missing seemingly overnight. Though, as we learn in Halo Mortal Dictata, some parents did, regardless. But second was to give the parents a sense of closure. While it could certainly be debated, and Mortal Dictata definitely brings it up, the idea was that it's better for a parent to watch their children die than to wonder for the rest of their lives what might have happened. Kind of a dark note to end on, but that basically covers everything on flash cloning and, more importantly, why the technology was used for the Spartan II program. The technology would actually go on to be used in the creation of Cortana, something I'm more than willing to cover in detail if there's demand, but I think this is a good place to end for today.
Wow. So, I didn't even, I knew flash cloning and stuff like that. Like, you kind of knew, just from the Halo, Fall of Reach book. I read that, and I watched the movie that was made, and I loved it. And they kind of touched on that in there, in the movie, and they went more in depth in the Fall of Reach when it was, the Fall of Reach. If you don't know, the Fall of Reach book shows when the Spartan II program was actually starting. It is she goes and basically interviews the kids, and then suddenly just takes them. And I can kind of see why she would want the clones for the parents. I can kind of see that, I can kind of see why she would want them to have that closure. But also in the Halo TV series, they touched more on that than they did in the Halo Fall of Reach movie. That a clone, and they even went more in depth in the TV show, because of when Halsey, spoiler alert, when she was on the run, she made a clone of herself to get captured so the real her could get away. The clone got taken in and had her thoughts, her memories, and everything. And she even said earlier on in the series, when it was discussed about the Spartan IIs and being taken as children and the clones and everything, and she even said there that that clones aren't perfect, basically. They all die sooner or later. Most of them sooner, but like he said, some of them lasted longer. I just found that interesting, and I liked being able to get a little bit more info on that. That was pretty cool.